starting with Episode 1, The Medici Bitch. The series premiere opens in 1560 France, and Catherine de Medici, the Queen of France, played by Samantha Morton, is utterly bored. She's supposed to be arranging the coronation of her son, the soon-to-be King Charles IX of France, but the tedious tasks involved do not hold her interest. So when a lowly servant named Rahima arrives with the Queen's meal, Catherine decides to entertain herself by regaling Rahima with her life story. Catherine declares that she used to be just like Rahima, poor, alone, and at the mercy of others. We learn that Catherine was orphaned as an infant and spent her early years bouncing between relatives until ending up a servant in a convent, bullied and abused. We get a glimpse of Catherine's clever nature when the actress playing the young Catherine, Liv Hill, using a technique called breaking the fourth wall, declares to the camera that she can make things happen by mentally willing them to do so. This appears to be true when the dog of the Mother Superior died while the old nun was beating on Catherine, simply because she was from the wealthy Medici family of Florence, who it turns out was pretty much hated by everyone in all of Italy. Soon after, the convent is invaded by rampaging and lustful soldiers looking for the Medici bitch who they think will be good for a sizable ransom once they are done with her. They threaten to rough her up but go off to think about it, and Catherine is unceremoniously dumped in the street, seemingly forgotten. Cold and bedraggled, she asks a passerby for help. He reassures her that she'll be fine and he should know he's a fortune teller named Ruggieri who will play a big part in Catherine's life in France. Then actual help does arrive for the young Catherine in the form of the worldly and corrupt Pope Clement VII, who just happens to have been born into the Medici family, making him Catherine's uncle. The Pope brazenly claims that Catherine is now his property and he would henceforth be the one to determine her fate, which is, of course, strategically designed to benefit none other than the Roman Catholic Church. Fast forward, and the 14-year-old Catherine is accompanied by her uncle to France, where he has arranged her marriage to the second son of King Francis I, who goes by the name and title of Henry, Duke of Orleans. It's clear from the start that this is a political union, not a love match. Catherine is aware that she needs to secure her position quickly, as her value lies mainly in the large dowry the Pope has promised. Upon arriving at the French court, Catherine encounters an odd array of characters, including her soon-to-be father-in-law, who has a fetish for all things Italian, and a sneeringly cruel, soon-to-be brother-in-law Francis, along with a cast of calculating members of the French court who are already designing the ways she could, or could not, be of use to them. Very quickly, Catherine is introduced to her future husband Henry, who she promptly falls in love with, but the immature Henry is not really interested in her, since he already has the love of his life in the form of an older woman named Diane de Poitiers, who happens not to be a Medici but is still somehow a cousin of Catherine's. Not to be missed in this episode is the wedding night scene where an audience gathers to witness the consummation of their marriage. Henry is barely able to perform, and Catherine, on the advice administered earlier by her devious cousin Diane, takes the initiative by climbing on top of him, to both Catherine's and Henry's pain and embarrassment. After it was done, Henry rushed off to take solace with Diane, and Catherine learns a lifelong lesson.
I learned never to trust a single soul.
The episode ends with the adult Catherine demonstrating the lesson to Rahima to never trust a single soul by getting the young servant tossed in the castle prison due to no fault of her own. Episode 2, To War Rather Than to Bed. Episode 2 continues the narrative structure established in the premiere, alternating between the older Queen Catherine and her younger self. We open with older Catherine appointing Rahima as her new maid, despite Rahima being dragged away at the end of the previous episode. Catherine uses the favors that go along with Rahima's new status to continue her story and impart lessons to her on power and vengeance in the 16th century French court. The adult Catherine narrates that the young Catherine of the past is faced with mounting challenges. Her uncle, Pope Clement the seventh has died without completing her dowry payment, leaving her position at the French court precarious. Additionally, she's struggling to conceive an heir with her husband Henry. Catherine devises a plan to secure her position. She manipulates King Francis by playing on his sympathies, acting coy and begging for mercy. Breaking the fourth wall, Catherine advises the audience to exploit others' weaknesses for personal gain. Meanwhile, Catherine's lady-in-waiting, Mathilde, which is French for Matilda, switches allegiance to Henry's mistress Diane in hopes of gaining favor with Henry's brother Francis. It seems he has a fetish for little people, and Matilda means to take advantage of that. After all, who doesn't want to sleep with the man next in line for the throne? Speaking of which, Henry has been nowhere near Catherine's bed since that awful wedding night, and Diane deems it of benefit to her own court position to advise Catherine that without an heir, they're both doomed. So a desperate Catherine calls on Ruggieri, who provides her with a smelly ointment to place on her nether parts as a means to guarantee conception. Catherine and Henry then spend a night together, but Catherine soon learns she's still not pregnant, so she takes up the proposition made by a stable hand to help with that problem. Diane, ever vigilant, discovers Catherine's affair with the stable hand, and when she finds out from Matilda that Catherine still isn't pregnant despite the efforts made, she threatens exposure. To protect herself, Catherine orders Matilda to prove her loyalty by poisoning the stable hand, which she does by leaving a poisonous apple in the stable. But it only makes the stable hand sick enough to miss work and stay at home with his wife and child. In the meantime, the king has discovered a flyer that is being passed around the kingdom of a cartoon picturing the king bending over for the Pope. In a display of royal cruelty, the king and his sons visit the stable hand's village home and murder his family when they find the flyer on a shelf above his bed. The king orders Henry to kill the man, and when the stable hand pleads for mercy, Henry balks at the idea. In a fit of rage, the king belittles Henry as being weak, which angers Henry to the point that he ends up violently stabbing the man to death, despite his initial reservations. This is Catherine's chance to provide solace to Henry while also demonstrating her budding abilities for strategic maneuvering. She colludes with a visiting sultan who is a celebrated soldier and talks him into going to war against Italy, promising him some of her uncollected dowry lands in return if he would just take Henry along and make a man out of him on the battlefield. Catherine's machinations bear fruit when Henry leaves for war. As the soldiers depart, Diane threatens to make Catherine's life a living hell if Henry doesn't return safely. Catherine bares her teeth for the first time, showing Diane that she is not the wimp she thought she was. Henry returns a year later, having earned the respect of his father the king. By the end of the episode, we see Catherine's influence growing. She's learning to play the long game, setting up alliances and eliminating threats with increasing skill. Episode 3: The Price. This episode opens with the young Catherine eagerly awaiting the return of Henry from war. However, her joy is short-lived when Henry arrives with an unexpected surprise: a mistress named Philippa and their infant daughter, who they have named Diane. This revelation is a crushing blow to Catherine, and Diane is none too happy as well. Diane decides that Philippa and the child must go when Philippa innocently reveals that Henry told her that Diane would be like a grandmother to baby Diane. This doesn't make Diane happy at all. Her one goal in life is to remain youthful so that Henry doesn't remember that she is a full 20 years his senior. Diane threatens to throw the baby out the window if Philippa doesn't leave for a convent immediately and take her baby with her. Then King Francis, who has grown fond of Catherine during Henry's absence, sees Henry's mistress and child sent away, and he is okay with that because he knows that Catherine is an asset that Henry can't afford to lose. And let's not forget that there is that pressing matter of Catherine's inability to conceive. Henry and Catherine both undergo an embarrassing physical examination to determine the cause of Catherine's infertility. But wait a minute. Who says it's Catherine's fault? Turns out there is something amiss with Henry's royal member. I did a video on what exactly was wrong with Henry's hoo-ha. Attach the link below this video. From the exam, the doctor informs the king, queen, and Diane that while Henry and Catherine can conceive, their reproductive organs are incompatible. He humorously illustrates this using an eggplant and a melon, concluding that they need to change their copulation position. This leads to an uncomfortable bedroom scene where Henry expresses regret for their physical mismatch and they proceed to go at it with Catherine face down on the bed. Despite the awkwardness, it seems that Catherine may finally be able to get pregnant. Catherine's quest to bear an heir leads her to the woods to consult with the magician Ruggieri. He warns her that magic always comes with a price, and it is one that the practitioner doesn't get to choose. This ominous advice foreshadows a difficult choice that Catherine will face in her pursuit of having Henry's child. That evening, Catherine goes out riding in the forest where she's attacked by marauders, leading her to run and hide in the tall grass. During the night, Henry finds her and it seems he is really concerned, so what do they do but have sex right there in the woods? The next day, Henry accuses his brother of plotting against Catherine on the word of Matilda, who overheard Charles Bourbon plotting with Henry's brother Francis. She and Henry confront Francis and Charles Bourbon in front of the king, but it all goes nowhere. So instead, Catherine decides that she needs a new dress and goes off to her dressmaker Sebastia's workshop, carrying a book that Ruggieri had given her on poisonous mushrooms. She innocently leaves the book in his room when she and Sebastio depart to watch a tennis match between Francis and Henry. Francis suddenly feels ill and calls out for water. Catherine tells her dressmaker to give him water, after which Francis promptly falls to the ground and chokes to death. The court doctor proclaims the cause of death as heart failure, but the king says poison and demands that his loyal protector Montmorency find the murderer, post haste. The traitorous Charles Bourbon chimes in saying, Italians are known poisoners, while reminding the court about the recent accusations Catherine leveled against Francis. Catherine runs to her room, followed by court guards come to get Sebastio after having found the book in his workshop. It is here that Catherine is confronted with a choice. Montmorency tells her that either her dressmaker takes the fall, or it will be her. Catherine's retinue realizes that this means none of them are safe when Sebastio is drawn and quartered for a crime he had no part in. So there it is. Sebastio's death is the price she paid for Ruggieri's magic. After all of that, the episode begins to wind down with the glorious news that Catherine is pregnant, and the king is so happy that he announces to the court that she's with child. But the show writers have one more plot line to introduce in Season 1. We return to 1560, where Queen Catherine meets up with Mary, Queen of Scots, and her ladies-in-waiting who are all dressed in white and all named Mary. Which is historically accurate, by the way. Mary's demeanor is off balance because Mary is a widow due to the death of Catherine's eldest son. I know, it's confusing. Like, when did that happen, right? Well, episode 4 will answer that question. For now, suffice it to say the Mary is not a fan of Catherine's, and we know this when Mary turns to her ladies-in-waiting as Catherine walks away and says, "If Charles IX is king, we will all be bending our knee to that Italian witch. I'll do everything in my power to make sure that doesn't happen. As the king's widow, the throne is rightfully mine." And in case you were wondering, I did a video all about the relationship between Catherine and Mary, and it is a very complex one for sure. And once again, I left a link to that video below. Episode 4 of The Serpent Queen, titled A New Era, kicks off with a significant 15-year time jump. The episode reveals that Catherine, now played by Samantha Morton both in the past and the present, has been busy expanding the royal family over the past decade and a half. The episode opens in the present with Catherine giving birth to her 10th child. It is a difficult birth, with the attending physician breaking the legs of the child to get it out, but the child dies anyway. This sad event deeply affects Catherine, and she falls into a spiraling depression, which deepens even more by the doctor proclaiming that she risks death if she has any more children. She is acutely aware that her relevancy to Henry is sure to lessen, since he only visited her bedchamber to make babies after all. We also meet the adult Henry, who seems to have grown into his role as the heir apparent after the death of his brother in episode 3. Henry appears to be the perfect dad, playing with his brood of children in the courtyard while Diane looks on. There is a scene where Catherine pulls herself out of her depression and joins the family playtime only to have Diane dominate Henry's attention. He remains hopelessly infatuated with Diane, and this ongoing love affair continues to be a thorn in Catherine's side. We also meet Catherine and Henry's eldest son Francis, who is engaged to Mary, Queen of Scots, and has been since they were both children. A weak Francis suffers from a lung condition that keeps him somewhat isolated from court life, and Mary is a domineering presence among all of Catherine's children, including Francis. She is a devout Catholic, pious and kind of boring, but that is soon to change. Also in this episode, we get a glimpse of the political landscape with references to the religious tensions between Catholics and Protestants that were brewing in France at the time. This sets the stage for Season 2's future conflicts and political maneuvering, which is sure to include Catherine's attempts to introduce religious tolerance before everything goes to hell with the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre. But back to episode 4 with Catherine, recognizing the threat Diane poses to her position, tries to remove her rival from court by gifting her a lavish home. However, Diane counters this move by enlisting the parfumer Angelica's help to enhance her beauty. In a bizarre twist, Angelica's method involves having Diane consume liquid gold, which seems to work wonders for her appearance. We even have a scene where Diane bathes herself in gold. I did a Season 1 video on Diane's bizarre beauty regimes, which you might just want to check out. Link is, of course, below. This episode also includes the death of King Francis. King Francis suffers a fall during an early morning hunt and later succumbs to his injuries, but not before assuring Catherine that she will prevail after his death. During their bedside talk, the king calls Catherine over and expresses his admiration for her and urges her not to give up on Henry, despite Diane's influence. He advises her to keep the Bourbons and Guises in conflict with each other as a political strategy that served his reign well. Francis also made Henry promise to put Catherine on the Privy Council after his death. This request was significant, as it demonstrated Francis's recognition of Catherine's political acumen and potential influence, despite her previous struggles to conceive an heir. By securing Catherine's place on the council, Francis was ensuring that she would have a voice in shaping the future of France, even as he passed the crown to Henry. This final act of Francis not only acknowledged Catherine's capabilities, but also set the stage for her eventual rise to power as the Serpent Queen. During a Privy Council meeting, Catherine attempts to assert her influence by suggesting that Henry prepare for war with the Holy Roman Emperor, who she asserts is sure to test Henry as the new king. Her advice is largely dismissed, with Henry only sending a single garrison to the border, a decision that comes back to haunt him when a messenger arrives at court with the severed head of the garrison commander. This grim delivery confirms Catherine's fears about the Holy Roman Emperor's aggression and underscores the consequences of ignoring her counsel. As for the coronation, Henry dons Diane's black and white colors on Coronation Day, much to Catherine's despair. It is a scene where we really get to start hating Diane when she marches in and takes Henry's arm, leaving Catherine behind as they glide the happy couple to the coronation. And last but not least, Catherine receives a letter that contains evidence that Mary and her cousin Elizabeth I, Queen of England, are conspiring against her. She involves Rahima in a plot to search Mary's rooms looking for more correspondence between Mary and Elizabeth, but then Catherine betrays Rahima, who gets caught by one of Mary's ladies in white, and Rahima is once again tossed into prison. Episode 5. The First Regency. This episode opens with Catherine concerned by the contents of the treacherous letter she received at the end of the last episode. It revealed a plot between Mary and Queen Elizabeth I of England against Catherine. And Catherine wants Rahima to help find more proof that Mary is up to no good. Also, we find Henry is preparing to go to war with the Holy Roman Emperor after his failed attempt at a meager show of force that failed miserably in the last episode. He wants Catherine to act as regent since she was proved right about the coming hostilities, and although she is not in line for the throne, he trusts her with the position.
Way, so I've decided to make you regent.
Regent of all France, not bad for a commoner.
Diane, meanwhile, is getting very fond of her gold potion, though Angelica warns her it will drive her mad. Henry formally names Catherine as regent, warning the Guises and the Bourbons to honor the position of regent and respect his wife's role as such. As Henry bids his family farewell, Diane rides in to announce she will accompany Henry to war and act as his advisor on strategy. The first thing Catherine has to face as regent is the lack of funds for the army at war. She calls her first Privy Council, but no one attends. She is forced to seek out the absent council members, and in doing so, she learns that the French Parliament is the source of military funding. She makes her case with confidence and intelligence, proclaiming their king needs food, weapons, horses, and armor. She wisely adds that she has always appreciated Parliament's loyalty, including the Protestants represented by a man named Pierre Marquez. She launches a passionate defense of the king and offers Pierre Marquez a private audience with the king in exchange for their support. Henry and the army return from the battlefield, and Diane has lost some of his favor for her misguided advice that kept him off the battlefield, which made him look like a coward. Diane discovers the king's guard will not let her into the king's chambers. She is now even more dependent on her gold dosage and continues her pursuit of Angelica to provide more gold. Diane appears to be going slightly crazy when displaying loyalty to Henry. She murders the Protestant Pierre Marquez while he has a not-so-private audience with the king. Henry, of course, immediately forgives Diane and gives her a chateau that he had previously promised to Catherine. The episode returns to the present-day scene where Catherine reflects on her time as regent with a mixture of nostalgia and regret. She tells Rahima that this was when she first truly understood the nature of power and the sacrifices required to maintain it. The episode ends with a hint of future conflicts. Catherine's success as regent has made her enemies more determined to bring her down, while her allies begin to see her as a potential long-term ruler rather than just a temporary placeholder. Episode 6, The Last Joust, opens with Catherine having a vivid dream predicting her husband Henry's injury during a jousting match. It's an ominous dream in which Diane and Henry both die. Henry from his injury and Diane from being pushed out a window by who else but a vengeful Catherine. The scene shifts to Catherine sitting next to her husband. Blood seeps from beneath his bandages, but as she watches, it's clear that it's not blood, it's something transforming into a snake that bites her. When she looks back at Henry, the bedsheets have transformed him into a marble statue. Also in this episode, Catherine visited the long-absent Ruggieri. She recounts the details of her dream to the magician, noting that Henry wore her color green as his sash. Catherine implies that she would like something done to Diane to remove her from her influence on Henry, but Ruggieri reminds her of the consequences of meddling with the natural order of things. Meanwhile, back at the castle, Mary, Queen of Scots, visits her Guise relatives to solicit their support to hasten her marriage to Catherine and Henry's son, the weak and frail Francis. Mary's grandmother is the Guise brothers' mother, Antoinette de Guise, and the brothers are her uncles. Mary seeks to get the Holy Roman Emperor to support her claim to the English throne once married, and she wants their help to attain just that. She also wants the Guise brothers to talk to Henry and get him started on the wedding arrangements, but she is told that would be tough. Henry is drinking heavily, and they would need to elicit the help of Diane to make any headway with the king. The cardinal offers Diane a deal that involves every church in France ringing its bells for the wedding. He has the power to impose a new tax for every chime to be paid directly to Diane. Henry is drinking through the Privy Council meeting when Diane sweeps in along with the betrothed couple to advocate for their marriage. The Bourbon brothers speak up against the idea while Diane loudly proclaims it to be a good thing, and the Guise brothers chime in their agreement to the plan as well. Amidst the ruckus, Henry hurls his glass across the room and decrees that the marriage will take place when he's good and ready. He fears that Mary will manipulate their son as Diane has done to him since he was a child. He's upset by the feud between the Guises and the Bourbons and the dysfunctional Privy Council, as well as fears that Diane does not love him, and maybe never did. As a strategy, Catherine suggests inviting an impartial advisor to weigh in on the matter, which will result in a halt to the wedding preparations. Catherine also gets Henry to establish austerity measures banning all official celebrations, including royal weddings. Catherine does not favor the idea of a post-haste wedding for 2 reasons. 1. She wants Henry to always see her as on his side in all matters. And 2. She does not want Mary acquiring any power that would threaten Catherine's position as Queen of France. Catherine then sets about souring Mary on the whole idea. She tells Mary that Francis's stutter is an indication of his inability to perform in the marriage bed. We all remember how Catherine had the same issue with Henry and how awful that was. Plus, if Mary's marriage is childless, she will forfeit claims to Scotland and England. Don't rush into anything, Catherine advises, to a shocked and upset Queen of Scots. Lots of court intrigue takes place with opposing factions for and against the marriage of Mary and Francis. Henry, wimp that he is, gives in to the whole thing and the wedding date is set. On the day of the wedding, the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V arrives at the behest of the Catholic Guise family. Henry summons his son for a fatherly chat to warn him not to be ruled by a woman. Francis is smarter than we might have thought and counters with the observation that Diane clearly rules over his father, so why should he be any different? He loves Mary, he states, and wants her to lead just like good old Diane. Through all of this, Catherine has come to a point where she sees Henry for what he really is. A man without will and powerless to Diane. As she and Henry dress for the wedding festivities, Henry apologizes, but it is too late. Catherine asks if he'll joust today, saying that's how she first saw him. It's a poignant moment. One that clearly marks the end of Catherine's love for Henry. Just as she saw in her dream, she asks him to wear a green sash for her, which he does. In the joust, Henry displays bravado, ordering his opponent to give it his all. Suddenly, Catherine has a twinge of guilt at what is about to happen and tells Matilda to rush and ask Henry to stop the joust. But it comes too late and Henry is struck in the eye by his opponent's lance. Bystanders are horrified. Catherine shrugs. Accidents happen. But Henry's not dead yet. And that takes us to episode 7, an attack on the king. In the next to the last episode of season 1, Henry has been seriously injured and it is just a matter of time until he keels over dead. The lance cannot be removed from Henry's eye and Francis, not ready to be king, is devastated. To no one's surprise, Diane steps up to take charge and has the doctor perform gruesome surgeries on criminals in the stockade to practice the art of lance removal. Meanwhile, in another room, Catherine is exhausted and falls asleep to dream more of her prophetic dreams. Catherine dreams of when she and Henry met, only to be awoken by music and revelry. Henry, eye bandaged but minus the stake, is seated at the wedding feast. Diane welcomes the horrified Catherine to join the celebrations for the king's miraculous recovery. Upon seeing her, Henry hemorrhages and collapses. Diane refuses to believe he has died, begging for help.
Madame de Poitiers, the king is dead.
He knew his death was what you truly wanted.
No! No, I didn't want it! I didn't!
Yes, you did. Because you knew in death he would belong to you as he never had in life.
A lot of court politics play into this episode, which lays the groundwork for season 2. Mostly, it is all about the escalation of division between the Protestants and Catholics. The Holy Roman Emperor is still at court, making his move by telling Catherine that the time is ripe for a Catholic France and by encouraging Mary's zealous Catholic stance, telling her it's God's will that Europe should be united under the one true faith with Mary at its head. Mary takes him at his word and uses the grief of her husband Francis, now King of France, to manipulate the situation. She banishes the Protestant Bourbons from court and approaches Rahima to shift her loyalty from Catherine and asks her to find her letter from Queen Elizabeth, which she believes Catherine now has. Mary steps into her power at the next Privy Council meeting, declaring that a sect of Protestants nearby must be rooted out and made an example of, thereby demonstrating the king's commitment to Catholicism. France is pleased to refrain from more Protestant murders. There is a scene demonstrating the Protestant purge, with men hanging from trees as evidence of Mary's militant crusade to wipe out an entire faith. Catherine joins forces with the Bourbons to kidnap her son as part of her strategy to gain control of the country and keep Francis from Mary's influence. The plan involves abducting Francis while he travels in the woods of Chambord. During a ride with Francis, Catherine attempts to persuade him to reconsider the alliance with the Holy Roman Emperor. Francis blows up, accusing her of being cold to him and his father, and wonders if he was born afflicted because of the blackness of her heart, where he outright calls her the Serpent Queen. This emotional outburst causes Francis to experience a bout of shortness of breath while coughing up blood. The kidnapping plan does not go as intended. Everything turns to chaos with too much craziness to recount here. Suffice it to say that the episode ends without showing the outcome of the kidnapping attempt, setting up tension for the season finale. The episode ends with Rahima working for Mary and returning to Catherine's room, where she quickly finds the letter. Catherine discovers her with letter in hand. Rahima confesses and spills on Mary to Catherine. But Catherine is simply amused. But before we continue to the last episode, I want to take a minute and let you know that this video is not my norm. My focus of this channel is to make entertaining yet informative videos about the real history behind TV shows and movies. 3 years ago, when I started this channel, I was the only one doing this, but now, with artificial intelligence so readily available to everyone worldwide, that has changed dramatically. The competition is now very fierce, so I am asking if you would support my channel and click the alert bell to get notifications of all the history videos I'll be making throughout Season 2 of The Serpent Queen. And thanks. I really appreciate it. Now, on to Episode 8. A Queen is Made. In this final episode of STARZ's The Serpent Queen, we find Rahima in the forest looking for Ruggieri, where he shows her a forgery of the seal of Elizabeth I of England that is used to verify royal correspondence. Rahima takes over as narrator, and we return to the chaos of the kidnapping scene where King Francis is coughing up blood, possibly dying. More crazy chaos ensues where Catherine stabs Montmorency, whispering, "Please forgive me," while the Bourbons scatter to the wind and the Guises chase them and take the fat Bourbon brother Louis prisoner. Meanwhile, Francis is rushed post-haste back home, where the doctor reports that he is seriously sick with little chance of survival, so the race is on to appoint a regent. The Guises want Montmorency, and Catherine entices Mary into thinking it should be her, while all the time, of course, she plans to be the one. But first, they must find Antoine Bourbon, the legitimate first-in-line regent, to sign off. Lots of action scenes happen where Antoine's hiding place is discovered after his brother Louis loses a finger to a crazed Mary at the prompting of a different kind of crazy, i.e. Catherine. Catherine visits Antoine in his hiding place, telling him once he's signed away the regency, she'll upgrade his living conditions, and if he doesn't sign, Louis will be executed. Montmorency suddenly shows up and rejects the regency that he has been offered.
You are the only one that can save France from any of these fucking idiots when they are in charge. All I have to do now is convince your dying son.
Then back to the woods, where Catherine begs her pal Ruggieri for his help to end her dying son's suffering. He warns her the opiate he provides will hasten her son's death. We see a soft touch to Catherine as she weeps in his arms at the loss of her firstborn son. Now back to Francis's bedside, where he has accepted his impending death, but the pain is unbearable. Catherine offers him the opiate, fearing he isn't strong enough to take it. Is she manipulating him, or does she truly care? It's hard to know at this point. Still, it's a moving scene as Catherine soothes her beloved son. He signs the document making her regent before he dies in Catherine's motherly arms. Mary realizes that she has been tricked by the evil Queen Catherine. So she says she'll write her cousin Elizabeth for support, but before that can happen, Mary's letter is intercepted by Ruggieri, who uses the fake seal to send Mary a fake return letter from Queen Elizabeth I inviting her to come home to her native soil. Mary and her merry maids head off to Scotland, only to discover she is not at all welcome. Clearly, Elizabeth doesn't want Mary anywhere near her. Catherine moves the court to Chateau de Chenonceau, where she demands Rahima declare sides.
So now that you know, are you with me or against me?
First, I want to know. You sacrificed your husband, your son, for power?
No. For freedom.
In that case, I am with you.
We end this season with the coronation, where Catherine puts the crown on her second son's head, making him King Charles IX. The power is, of course, all hers, as the mother regent.